You know how sometimes a tiny little thing can unlock a whole world of fascinating connections? That's exactly where we're diving in today.
Oh, yeah.
You, our ever-curious listener, are probably familiar with that moment when a seemingly small observation just sparks a cascade of questions. Well, get ready because we've got just that for you.
Absolutely. We're starting with a really grounded, relatable moment and seeing where it takes us in the natural world. It's pretty neat.
So picture this. Kesser, a young observer of the world, comes back from a swim. His grandma, Oma, spots something on his backpack and points. And what does Kesser find?
Yeah.
These small black bits that at first glance looked a bit like, well, mouse droppings.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out, after a bit of laughter and closer inspection, they're seeds. Specifically, seeds from a plant called lugkarsi, you might know it as garlic mustard, which he and his friend Steen had collected during a summer wander through a local meadow.
What's so wonderful about this little story is that initial, what's this moment? It's the kind of curiosity that when you tug on that thread, reveals this amazing web of life all around us.
Exactly, because Kesser and Steen aren't just your average kids. They're really fascinated by butterflies. They have this lovely, gentle approach to nature, preferring to watch and observe without disturbing things. Kesser had this great way of putting it, and I just loved it. If you give nature time, it comes automatically to you.
Oh, that's lovely.
It really speaks to the patience needed to truly see what's happening in the natural world, doesn't it?
It does. It's about creating a space where nature feels comfortable enough to show its secrets. And that's so central to understanding what biodiversity really means.
So our mission for this deep dive, which you're already on, so thanks for joining, is to explore this lugkars plant, its surprising link to these beautiful butterflies that Kesser and Steen admire, and ultimately why even those of us with just a tiny balcony or a few pots can play a role in supporting biodiversity.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so lugkarsa. Let's unpack this plant that started it all.
Right. Logkars, or Alliaria pedialta if we want to get botanical, has names that immediately tell you something important about it.
Okay.
The Danish Lugkars and the German Knoblauchrock both point to the same characteristic. A really distinct oniony or garlicky smell that comes from its leaves when you crush them.
That makes perfect sense. So it smells like garlic or onion. It's not just some made-up name then.
Yeah.
And in terms of how it grows, it's a biennial, right? Meaning it takes 2 years to complete its life cycle?
Precisely. In its first year, it grows as a low rosette of green leaves hugging the ground. Interestingly, these leaves stay green even through the winter, but the plant doesn't flower in this first phase.
Huh.
It's all about storing energy for the big push in year 2.
A very strategic start. And then in the second year, it really takes off, doesn't it?
Exactly. That's when it sends up a stem, often reaching about 1 meter in height. You'll typically find it in soil that's rich in organic matter, what we call humus-rich, often in the shade of forests and hedges right across Denmark. It's actually quite a common plant if you know what you're looking for.
What really struck me in our sources is that this isn't just some modern-day weed. Lugkars has a history with us humans, a really long one, right?
Absolutely. Lugkars holds a pretty significant place in history, being the first known spice plant used in Denmark. We're talking way back, around 6,000 years ago.
Wow, 6,000 years.
Yeah, when hunter-gatherer communities were living here. Archaeological digs have found traces of lugkars inside Stone Age pottery, suggesting it was a regular part of their diet.
No way.
Imagine that the very same plant whose seeds ended up in Kesser's backpack was flavoring meals thousands of years ago.
That's just mind-blowing. From ancient cooking pots to a kid's backpack, it really makes you think about the long threads of connection in nature. And it wasn't just for flavor, was it? I remember reading about medicinal uses, too.
Yes. In the Middle Ages, lugkars was used for various medicinal purposes, including as a remedy for respiratory issues and even as a vermifuge, which is something to expel worms.
A worm repellent. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting to note that while it has these compounds like mustard oil glycosides, a sulfur-containing essential oil, and cardioactive glycosides, it's not really used medicinally in modern times.
So some interesting chemistry under the hood there, but even if we're not using it for medicine anymore, it still pops up in the culinary world, doesn't it?
It does. Some people still use the leaves as a culinary herb, as a sort of alternative to onion, chives, or even cress. It has that distinctive pungent flavor.
Right, that garlicky thing.
Exactly. The Danish Food Administration does recommend keeping your consumption of the fresh leaves to around 10 grams, though, just as a general guideline.
Good to know if you're thinking of adding a bit of Stone Age flavor to your cooking. Okay, so we've got the background on lugkars, its smell, its life story, its history. Now let's bring in the stars of our story for Kesser and Steen. The butterflies. Specifically, the Aurora butterfly. Tell us about this sign of spring.
The Aurora butterfly, scientifically known as Anthocurus cardamines, belongs to the white butterfly family. And it's quite a striking butterfly, especially the male.
Oh, yeah.
They have these really noticeable orange tips on their forewings, which makes them probably the easiest butterfly to identify in Denmark. Once you've seen one, you won't forget it.
Orange wingtips, that sounds so vibrant. Where would Kesser and Steen, or any of us for that matter, typically spot these beauties?
Well, they tend to prefer meadows that have a lot of flowers and a bit of humidity and some shelter from the wind. But, and this is key to our connection, they also frequent gardens where their crucial host plant, Lugkars, is growing. So the presence of Lugkars directly influences where you're likely to see an aurora.
It all comes back to that one plant. And it's mentioned that they're a real herald of spring.
Absolutely. They start to emerge in April, but you'll see them in greater numbers around May, coinciding with the blooming of dandelions. That's when the butterfly world really starts to wake up for the year.
Which reminds me of Steen's humorous take on dandelions being butterfly food, and therefore a perfectly valid reason to put off mowing the lawn. I love that.
Me too.
Sometimes the simplest way to help nature is just to, well, maybe be a little less tidy.
That's such a great point. A little bit of what might look like neglect in a garden can actually be a huge benefit to the local ecosystem. Now, let's delve into the Aurora butterfly's life cycle because it's so closely intertwined with Lugkars.
Okay, eggs first, I presume.
Yes, in the spring, the female Aurora will lay her distinctive eggs on the flowers, or the young seed pods. These are called calyx of cruciferous plants, and Lugkars is one of their top choices.
Right, those pods.
The eggs themselves are quite something to see. They're brick red in color and hatch in about 5 to 6 days.
Brick red eggs right on the flowers. You'd really need a keen eye to spot those tiny signs of new life.
You would indeed. And once the larvae hatch, their primary food source is the flowers and those developing seed pods. However, if they run short, they will also feed on the stems and leaves.
Okay.
But here's a really critical detail that shows how specialized this relationship is. Research has shown that the Lugkars family needs to be a certain size, and the seed pods have to be at just the right stage of development for the larvae to actually survive.
So it's not just any Lugkarsi plant will do. The timing of the plant's growth is absolutely crucial for the baby butterflies, like really specific.
Precisely. This is why the female Aurora is so selective about where she lays her eggs. And remarkably, she typically lays only a single egg per plant.
Just one.
Just one. Scientists believe this likely reduces competition for food among the larvae.
One egg per plant. That's some serious resource management going on in the insect world. So what happens after the larvae have had their fill of Lugkars?
After about 2 to 3 weeks of feeding and growing, the larva enters the pupa stage. And this pupa then overwinters. It spends the entire winter in this seemingly inactive state, waiting for the return of warmer weather. It's not until the following spring, around April, that the adult butterfly finally emerges.
Wow.
This really reinforces Kesser's observation about needing patience in the garden. The rewards of creating a good habitat might not be immediate, but nature has its own rhythm.
It's like a tiny little chrysalis time capsule holding the promise of spring. Okay, so the Aurora butterfly is clearly dependent on Lugkars, but the sources mention something about chemical warfare. That sounds quite dramatic.
It is a rather dramatic term, but it describes something really fascinating that's happening on a chemical level. You see, plants like Lugkars and other members of the cruciferous family plants like Watercress, honesty, and perennial honesty, they have a natural defense mechanism.
Okay.
They can produce mustard oil as a chemical deterrent to stop themselves from being eaten. It's their way of saying, hey, I don't taste good, leave me alone.
So it's like a built-in natural pesticide that the plant produces to protect itself. Very clever. But if that's the case, how can the delicate aurora larvae actually feed on it?
This is where the aurora larvae show their incredible adaptation. They have evolved a special protein that essentially prevents the formation of this mustard oil defense compound in their bodies.
No way!
Yeah, it's like they have a secret biological trick that disarms the plant's defenses. This is why Lugkars and its close relatives become suitable, and indeed essential, food sources specifically for these adapted larvae. It's a beautiful example of coevolution, where two species evolve in response to each other.
Wow. So what's a defense mechanism against most of the world is basically an invitation to dinner for the aurora larvae. Nature is just constantly surprising, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this brings us right back to Kesser and Steen's experiences and how they started to understand Oma's approach to gardening.
Right, Olma's garden.
They began to see that her way of letting some of these wild plants grow wasn't just accidental. It was actually creating a perfect habitat for the very butterflies they were so keen on observing.
So Oma wasn't just being a little relaxed with the weeding. She was perhaps, unknowingly, fostering a mini ecosystem right there.
Exactly. And the key takeaway for all of us, for you listening as well, is that having more of these plants that we might typically think of as weeds in our gardens and green spaces can actually attract a much wider variety of wildlife, including these really special species like the Aurora butterfly. Many of the plants we dismiss as unwanted are, in fact, vital food sources for these creatures with very specific needs.
This really brings the idea of biodiversity down to a very personal level, doesn't it? It's easy
Yeah.
to think of it as this huge global challenge, but it sounds like even small changes in our own backyards or even balconies can actually make a difference.
Precisely. The story of Kesser and Steen's discovery, sparked by those tiny seeds, really highlights that if we want to continue to see these beautiful butterflies fluttering around, we all need to be willing to share a little bit of our space, whether it's a sprawling garden or just a few flower pots on a patio with these so-called wild plants.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the crucial role they play in the larger web of life.
So to bring it all together, we've journeyed from seemingly insignificant black seeds in a backpack to uncovering the fascinating history of Lugkars, this ancient spice turned modern weed, its incredible chemical defense system, and its absolutely vital role in the life cycle of the stunning Aurora butterfly with those unmistakable orange wingtips that Kesser and Steen love to watch.
And it all beautifully illustrates the incredible interconnectedness within nature. Something as small and overlooked as a few seeds can be the starting point for understanding these complex and vital relationships. It's quite something.
It really drives home the point that biodiversity isn't some abstract concept that's happening far away. It's tangible. It's happening right outside our windows, in our gardens, and our local parks. And as we've learned from Kesser and Steen's experience and Oma's intuitive gardening, we all have the potential to contribute to supporting it, even in the simplest of ways.
And this leaves us with a thought for you, our listener. Perhaps the next time you spot a plant that you might automatically label as a weed, take a moment to really look at it. Consider its story. Think about what creatures might rely on it for food or shelter.
Yeah, just pause for a second.
Exactly. You might be surprised by the intricate and fascinating world you begin to uncover right there in your own little corner of the planet.
Keep your eyes open and your curiosity piqued, everyone. There's always a deeper dive to be taken and so much to discover when you do. Thanks for exploring with us today.